Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Totalbiscuit of the WoW podcast, Blue Please on CynicalBrit.com. Welcome back to Zul Gurub. So I said I'd give you a little bit of a run through and show you a few things. This is a first run, so none of us have really been here before. So we're just going to try a few bosses and see how it goes. I'll show you some of the mechanics, and I'll also talk a little bit about balance, a few of the issues that are currently in place in the dungeon, as well as bugs and things like that. That can be given as feedback to Blizzard. So you might have noticed there that we just ended up killing a Venomancer, and I showed you that in the previous tour video. So as it turns out, the Venomancer is protecting the green pot. The green pot must be used in order to get past those poisonous plants, because it will reduce incoming nature damage by about 90%. So you kill the Venomancer, you use that, and then you leg it past there, and then you meet the first Tiki Lord, who will do the Tiki Torch, and that's really about it. He does very little damage, to be totally honest with you. You can see there we're just standing in the AoE, it really doesn't matter at all. As with all of my dungeon runs, this will be done at 200% speed. There are no new sounds in here as of yet, so you are not missing anything by the sounds not being on. It's the second Venomancer right here, and once again, you will need this pot. Now, he has a mechanic that we discovered right here, which is basically a poison link, and it will do a hideous amount of damage unless you break away. And when you do break away, it will then do an explosion damage, so even if you get away really, really quickly, if you are still on low health, you will explode and die anyway, so you have to be very careful indeed. So that's really the only mechanic from that, but the interesting thing about it is that it demonstrates one of the mechanics that you are going to face in this area that we're coming up to. Now, these two Snake Guard need to be taken out of the room, and you fight them next to the pot. They will do an anti-cauldron thing, which will get rid of your armor. So you want to go back to the pot, get a new thing of nature resistance, and then fight them again, because the things they put on the ground, as well as their breath, does a massive amount of damage unless you have that buff on you. You will die horribly. It is really unpleasant, trust me. Now, we're heading in right here to the remade version of Venoxus, and he is barely like what you remember. The mechanics are very, very different indeed. And I'll have to say this is actually one of the most creative bosses in this dungeon, if not the most creative, and certainly one of the most challenging. Unfortunately, we will not kill this boss today because there have been login issues with Battle.net. So we had one of our guys disconnect and nobody could log back in. So this boss really can't be four-manned, although we did manage to four-man a number of other bosses, and we will show you that. I'd like to point out that I'm currently grouped with members of one of the Trollface raiding divisions who are currently 4 out of 12 on heroic 10-man raiding, and I haven't done a dungeon in about 3 months. So I am feeling a little bit rusty, to say the least, and getting confused about all of my key bindings. It's okay, let's get a couple of free enchants on my character right here and we can get started. So what this guy is going to do, and we'll show you a few wipes just to give you a rough idea. Obviously the proper video will come out at some point, as well as the proper wipe-a-thons and things like that, so this is just a prelim. What he's going to do is he's going to cause venom to cascade down there, and what it will do is it will form a kind of maze. Now, if you stand in this, you will take massive amounts of damage. Now, what he also tends to do is what you just saw there, which is a large barrage of venom projectiles. They will fire out at a significantly quick pace. They have a travel time as well, so they need to be interrupted very rapidly. He has this annoying tendency of doing it directly after a link, and indeed what one of my raiders was telling me here is that he believes the internal cooldown on the abilities on this boss right now is actually slightly too low. What he'll then do is something called Blood Venom, which will cause these 3 beams to come out. The problem with these beams, as you can see, is they are deceptively thin. They're actually much larger than that because they pulse. So you can't sort of jam yourself between a couple of them and think you're okay. You will not, as you can see, be okay. That will cause you an awful lot of problems. After he does this, he will generally run down and he will actually get stunned. So you've got a brief period waiting to do 100% damage to him. He's got that breath right there once again. That needs to be moved out of by the tank once he sees the casting time. And he needs to get out of it, otherwise he will die. You do not have the option of using the cauldron in here because he will lock that down. And as you can see, he can do a massive amount of damage. So spreading out is vitally important to ensure that the Link does a bare minimum of damage. He will hit like an absolute truck. It is very unpleasant indeed. So here we go. We've got another wipe coming up right here of this 4-man, because we're down to 4 people now. So the problem is that because of the amount of damage this guy puts out, it's a little bit DPS racy, so if you screw it up, or if indeed you don't have enough damage, you will probably just get killed. It is a really hard fight on the healer. The healer is dedicated to doing all sorts of different things at different times. There's a lot of area of effect damage going off. There's a lot of group damage going off. Even if you don't stand in the maze, then you're still going to get hit by links. You're still going to get hit by other things, so you do need to watch out for that. The maze is kind of neat, as you can see, because it always gives you a way that you can run. You're never actually going to be completely blocked off, but it does require a little bit of precision in terms of your movement. So there's the blood venom right there. I'm going to run down the maze, and these things, by the looks of it, will change target, and they'll start chasing different people. Once he does his exhaustion right there, he will wipe the maze. So this is the time when you can get repositioned and get everything sorted out if need be. Separate, make sure you're not taking massive damage there. You saw we were standing too close to each other, which is why we took excessive damage from there. And then, of course, he followed up with that, which did not get interrupted, and we ended up getting destroyed for that. I mean, I'm just noticing my counterspell on cooldown there, and it looks like I put an interruption on there, but either not quick enough or, I don't know, whatever the case, I did die from it. The projectiles fire out extremely fast, so you're going to get hit by a couple of them. So you do need to watch out for that. I'd imagine once you're using things like deadly boss mods, etc., in this particular instance, that will become significantly easier. It will be much easier to see. There are very few spell announcements at the moment, and I know Blizzard likes to put a few of those in every now and again, instead of relying on deadly boss mods, and that pretty much is that, folks. That's how it works, and like I said, it is not really all that possible to do with 4 people, although I'd imagine that, you know, with enough precision and a amazing healer and no bad luck and no screwing up from us, that we would go down. I mean, our heal is great, there's no question, but there's just so much damage coming in, it's really hard to deal with. Okay, folks, we'll go along and we'll have a look at something else, shall we? This dungeon is rife with various different mini-bosses. This is one of them, and you have to kill her before this happens. If this happens, things tend to get a little bit messy. These guys hurt an awful lot. Lots of poison damage, lots of nastiness, and horrible, horrible things. Yeah. But, fortunately, we do have enough AoE and control, and we can deal with that. I can't imagine that's going to be all that hard with 5 people. Bear in mind that we were slow in the DPS because there were 2 DPS as opposed to 3, so that does make a fairly reasonable difference. Bear in mind there's also a couple of cooldowns that could have popped there. Now, this is the Cache of Madness, and you might remember the Madness area. It had these optional random bosses. There were 4 of them, and I believe all 4 are still here as well. Now, this time they're guarded by these crazy floating purple tiki heads. You bring those down. They are pretty annoying because they have a tendency of going all over the place and shooting everywhere. Once you get them locked down, it's fine. Your healer just is going to have to deal with a lot of damage that's coming in on the group. Bring down everything you possibly can on their heads, and they will fall fairly easily. You then need to search the room for various artifacts. When you find the right collection of artifacts, I don't know whether or not the boss is determined by which artifacts you pick. It is a possibility. Whatever the case, you will grab the artifacts, it will then float into the middle of the room, and then they will summon a boss. As we discovered, this boss is extremely easy, and there doesn't appear to be any real challenge involved in it, but we will show you it nonetheless. And there is there's one mechanic with this guy that you need to keep an eye on. The rest of it's just pretty generic. So there you go. You've got these artifacts that will flow into the room and float around and spin around and be all that threatening and mystical, and then they will summon this particular boss right here after a fairly lengthy waste of time. You do, I believe, have to combine all 4 to do it. It does make me think that combining different ones might give a different result, but whatever the case, there you go. There's Hazara, who you may remember. He's going to cast a lot of Wrath. He's a druid, and you need to watch out for that. Wrath can be interrupted. Wrath hits for about 70-80k. It can also be spell reflected, so that would be certainly worthwhile. Now, his main mechanic, as you're going to see, is he's going to summon some nightmares right there, and these nightmares need to be taken out by the members of the group that aren't locked down by them. Has to be done extremely quickly. If they make contact with you, they will kill you, and as far as I can tell, the best thing to do is sort of stay close to the center of the room, not towards the edge, and you should be able to avoid an awful lot of that. We lost our hunter there as a result of that mechanic. We didn't know really what was going to happen. Of course, now we do, but with 1 DPS, plus, of course, our priest throwing in a couple of things for good measure, because, let's be honest, without the Wrath, this guy hits for nothing. If you can interrupt and spell lock that Wrath for as long as possible, then this guy hits like an absolute wet paper bag. He's horrendously bad at what he does, so you really don't have to worry about that. He'll do his Awakened Nightmares thing, nobody really cares, we've dealt with it, and then you can just freaking kill him. That is all he does. Bear in mind, he is one of 4. There are the 3 others, and some of them are more difficult than others. And they do reflect mostly what they used to do in Zul Gurub, if I remember correctly. They are fairly similar with a couple of modifications for Cataclysm. Now, please die. Please die. Please die. Yes, he will eventually go down. There you go. There is no loot in here, by the way, as you might imagine. This is in a very early state on the PTR. You should not expect to be seeing loot on any of the PTR content initially. Any loot that you do see will probably be data mined. It will be from places like MMO Champion, and as with everything, it is, of course, subject to change. You saw the little tiki traps right there. We're not going to go there right now. We're going to go and check out Bloodlord Mandakir, and here we go. A little bit of the boulder rolling minigame. I like this. This is kind of neat. I can definitely go with stuff like that. Speed up the guy at the top, no problem at all. Watch out for his ability to knock you all over the place. This is the same kind of thing that you needed to watch out for in the old Zul Gurub. You need to keep your backs to the wall. That is blatantly obvious. And otherwise, you will end up going into other mobs. The guys with the charge in this one, the mounted cavalry guys, are really nasty. So you do have to watch out for that. However, you can trivialize this. And I'm about to show you how. So there you go. This Frost Cauldron right here will take about 80% of the HP of any mob off. So you just grab it, shoot something, it'll freeze them for about 10 seconds, and they'll lose 80% of their HP. It's absurd. And I thoroughly expect this to get nerfed in this particular area because it trivializes everything. Everyone can pick this up. This stuff is all over the place. You just beat the crap out of them, and there you go. And the worst thing is, this thing stacks as well. That's the most ridiculous thing about it. And we're about to show you just how ridiculous it is when we are able to use it on Bloodlord Mandakir, which would be my fairly major point for bug fixing. You can't let them use that on Bloodlord Mandakir. It's ridiculous. We effectively did a Reckoning Bomb on the guy. I will give you an example. Actually, no, I won't. I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm able to do with this thing. If you think mages are OP now, oh man, I will show you. Now, we'll show you a few wipes on this guy before we just decide to give it up, because this is a real DPS race, and with 2 DPS, it's just not happening. It uses some similar mechanics to the old version, but in my opinion, it is way less elegant. It is a brute force DPS race fight. There is very, very little finesse involved in it, and as a result, I'm not a big fan of how it's actually built, but you will see nonetheless. So he's riding a Skeletal Raptor around, and eventually he will split off from his Skeletal Raptor. His Skeletal Raptor's gonna run around eating those spirits so that we can't actually make any use of them, so that's not so great. So you need to kill the Raptor basically whenever you see him. He'll do a little bit of damage as well, but otherwise not too big a deal. So Devastating Slam, you saw it on the ground right there, and the weird mechanic about this guy is he's going to charge and he's going to kill you. And as far as I'm aware, there was no way to stop that from happening. We tried various things. We thought, oh, maybe he doesn't do it while you're within a certain range. Wrong. Maybe he doesn't do it if the Raptor's dead. Wrong. Maybe he doesn't do it if the Raptor's alive. Also wrong. So, as far as I can tell, there's no way to stop it. It's going to hit you for about 1.8 million. Actually, it's 180 million or something like that. Whatever the case. It's a lot. You're not going to live through it. Let me put it that way. And you will be resurrected by the spirits. However, when you are resurrected, you will gain what looks like a debuff. It's actually a buff. It will help you out, if I remember correctly. You will do more damage after that. It's called the Spirit's Vengeance or something like that. You will get powered up. So, you power up kind of about the same speed as it is. There you go. That is a massive overkill that you saw on the combat log right there. But the problem is that with 2 DPS right here, we just really couldn't do it. Aside from that, that's really all the mechanics you're going to have to face there. So I'm going to show you how to break this fight. So I'm just going to skip forward, and I'll show you us basically two-shotting this guy. So we all grab the Cauldron buff, and 1 and 2 dead. Simple as that. So I believe my Ice Lance there hit for about 3 million. Yeah. Fairly sure that's not actually intended, and Blizz really does need to do something about that. That is a tad silly. Whatever the case, you understand. They will fix it, no doubt. Now, we did actually manage at one attempt to get him down to 60k health, so it is doable with 4 people. It's just we couldn't be bothered by that point. It's blatantly obvious that we should be doing it with 5. Now, I'm just... Hold on for a second and hear me out. They are a lot larger than they appear. if you saw that on the video footage, you'll have noticed that as far as I could see on my screen, I was pretty much in the right place. Evidently not. As far as I can tell, the fire effects are actually smaller than the actual area of effect of the damage, so it's not good. You may die once or twice on those, just as a direct result of that. You might say, well, Totalbiscuit, just make excuses for your own incompetence. Not really. Just go rewind. Have a look at it. You'll notice that I didn't actually run into them. Right, now, this is actually just a mini-boss, as we discovered, and he is a joke. He doesn't do anything. He does shadow bolts, and I believe he's supposed to do a fear. He doesn't do anything. He is now dead. Yeah, took less than a minute. Nobody cares. I don't even know why he's there in his current form. Something needs to be done to him because he is less difficult than most of the trash in this area. In fact, let me show you somebody who is less difficult as. He is not as difficult. This giant scary demon is less dangerous than the head chef of the Gurabashi refugees, as we are about to demonstrate right now with his myriad of abilities, including Fish Slap and Slap and Chop. Yes, indeed. Vince here. Oh, God. Something about nuts. We don't want to hear it. He is harder. He's actually a quest mob for certain random quests that appear in here, as far as I can tell, on a daily basis. I believe that they're just rotating dailies, and you have to kill him plus the giant fishing troll down by the river. And yeah, that guy actually hits harder and is more dangerous and takes longer to kill than the demon. Why? Who knows? He is a troll, so he is pretty badass. He's wearing a chef's hat. So, who knows? It's kind of Hell's Kitchen thing going on here. Right, there's the second Tiki for you. He doesn't really do much other than throw bones all over the place, which is not exactly dangerous. It's minor AoE damage that can be very easily dealt with. It's random targeted. You can't get out of it regardless of range, so just beat on him and he'll just fall over. And that really is about it. The boss that we're about to go into is the replacement for High Priestess Arlok. And a lot of the mechanics are quite similar, but there are a few changes. And as we discovered with this one, this is very difficult to the point where, yeah, taking 5 people, you stand a chance. Taking 4, probably not. We also discovered that in Phase 2, she spawns a bunch of panthers, which you cannot crowd control as far as I can tell. There's about 15 of them. We thought, oh, we'll just use Ring of Frost. Doesn't work. Frost Nova? No, that doesn't work either. Oh, well, that's bloody wonderful, isn't it? So, yeah, indeed, Ring of Frost doesn't actually even cast in there. It will go through its casting, and then it will not appear on the floor. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's bugged, maybe it's not. But as far as we can tell, they're immune to all forms of area of effect slows and crowd control. So, yeah, picking them up a little bit difficult. Now, we'll just skip all this trash because there's nothing really special in that group, and we'll go on to here, and this is the replacement. So the first thing she's going to do is Tears of Blood. This can be interrupted, which is going to throw AoE shadow damage around the place. She's got an interruptible Shadow Bolt as well. She's going to hit like a wuss in Phase 1 on the tank, as long as you interrupt those spells. And she's then got something called Wave of Agony. Wave of Agony is very, very easy to avoid. You can see it coming a mile away, and the cone is very, very narrow, so you just take a few steps to the right, and you'll be just fine. When she gets to 50%, as we then discovered, is the phase where stuff gets real, and you get horribly slaughtered and eaten by panthers, which is what's about to happen right here. There you go. She goes the avatar of Bethek. Oh god, everything, my face, and everybody else's face. Yeah, we tried the crowd control, it didn't work. However, bear in mind, these panthers have about 175,000 HP, so with 3 DPS, yes, you should be able to beat them. You should just be able to AoE them down, and then just go from there, and that should be fairly easy. She will disappear. I'm fairly sure she will summon more panthers as well, so just bear that one in mind. Right, okay, so as you see, we didn't even bother doing any more attempts on that. There wasn't any point, considering the amount of DPS we had. So we're going to head on and we're going to go and try Zanzil, who is supposedly the penultimate boss of this particular dungeon, who, as it turns out, is also fairly easy. I would, however, like to point out that I'm not complaining about difficulty here, because 1, we are in item level 359 gear, pretty much all of us. All of these guys are raiders from my realm, and I'm using a pre-made that has 359. So we are all overgearing this instance. This instance is designed for those in heroic blues, i.e. item level 343, if I recall correctly. It has been a while. Whatever the case, we have more gear than we need. Yes, we are one man short, which should make a fairly significant difference. As you can see here, it does. It takes ages for us to kill this big pack right here. Not that there's an awful lot to really worry about. There are these massive shrinks that really should be removed. We're not even bothering with them, as you can see. They reduce the tank's stamina by about 2,000. Does it matter? No, not really. As you can blatantly see there, we didn't even bother to remove them, and it worked just fine. Bear in mind, we're in here for testing as regards to anything else. That's a secondary concern. We want to test this kind of thing out. We want to see exactly how it works and where the balance issues are. And what I will say, just as a quick bug report, is that the Mandakir boss has massive problems in terms of respawning. It will stop you from resurrecting or releasing corpse at random for no apparent reason. And also, it's really annoying if you're a Frost Mage because you will unsummon your Water Elemental and you can't bring it back because the Water Elemental will go on cooldown for the fight. So you are effectively losing a ton of DPS and, of course, the ability to use those repeated Fingers of Frost procs. You will not be able to do that, and you will just be killed at random. So unless there's an element of the fight we're not really understanding, which from about 5 or 6 attempts it did seem to do the same thing every time, it's just random deaths, then that also needs to be resolved. As far as I'm concerned, that pet needs to be auto-summoned back, and one has to assume that also works for other pet classes, but they don't have cooldowns on the summoning, so they probably don't care as much. Okay, Zanzil. This guy is fairly entertaining, and he will be using the cauldron mechanics quite a bit, and the different cauldrons will allow you to do different things. Now, this is something we didn't realize, but it's something that occurred to me afterwards. There's actually a fire cauldron in here that'll do a massive amount of area of effect damage. He just summoned a bunch of Zanzil zombies, and there's a huge number of them. So you're looking to AoE them down. We bring them into the Ring of Frost. We bring down as much Blizzard firepower as possible. But considering the numbers, you are getting some diminishing returns in the AoE. The fire cauldron that is behind me could be very easily used to eliminate those particular zombies, and you should do that. Now, the ice cauldron is very effective at bringing down these berserkers he summons that otherwise will have almost 3 million health. And there we go, he will also summon toxic gas, which will be dealt with by going to the green cauldron. The toxic gas will also kill any zombies that are still in the field, so in reality you don't really need the fire cauldron, but it makes this fight even easier. That really is all he does, with the exception, of course, of that ground fire, which you don't want to be standing in, and his consistent shadow bolts, which can be interrupted. That's it. It's an entertaining fight, but as far as I'm concerned, it is way, way too easy. And we're doing this with 4 people. And it's not difficult, and there don't appear to be any major DPS requirements. If there were, we in theory shouldn't be able to beat them, because we're 1 DPS down, and that's a fairly severe loss. But as you can see, you can very easily control these zombies. You can use frost traps, you can use novas, you can use Ring of Frost, and then of course you can hit them with massive AoE, or just not even bother and do this, and watch them all die from the toxic gas, which they will. So you really don't need to worry about them. It takes a little while for it to happen, but yes, they will eventually be destroyed. And yeah, that's it. That's all there is to Zanzil, honestly. And aside from that, that's pretty much coverage of it. Obviously, I can't go to the final boss, and I am looking to put together a proper guide. This is not a proper guide, this is a first impressions video. A proper guide, as well as any wipe-a-thons if necessary, although I don't think there really will be, will come up over the next couple of days once the login servers have stabilized and we're able to get a full group on, and hopefully we're not suffering some of these bugs that we've had in here. Aside from that, my assessment of the dungeon in the way that it currently is it's alright. I mean, it's not as bad as I feared it would be. Some of the fights are genuinely great. I mean, I think Venoxus is an excellent fight. It's really, really good. Zanzil could be better if... I don't know, I think he's got enough abilities, I just don't think the abilities do enough. You've got so long to get to the gas cauldron, for instance. There's a massive casting time, and it doesn't even do all that much damage anyway. The zombies getting killed off by the gas means that you don't even have to use the fire cauldron, so you don't have to use those mechanics. And the berserkers are easily dealt with by just hitting them with the frost cauldron, and that's it. I mean, you take 80% of their health off, you just then nuke them down, and that's it. The fire is so slow to cast that it's really hard to accidentally stand in it, so I'm not too worried about that. It's a fun encounter, but again, it needs buffing in my opinion. The mini-bosses are basically a joke. As you saw, we stomped them into the ground with 4 people, so they're not exactly challenging, although it's a nice change of pace. What I will say for this dungeon is that it's got the right amount of trash. I was fearing there'd be too much of it. There isn't, and the trash is sufficiently varied, and I like the cauldron mechanics. The cauldron mechanics are fun. There's a lot of cool stuff available here. I can't really comment on the random bosses. The one that we did was easy, but that doesn't mean the other ones will be. So there you go. And of course, this boss right here requires 5 players, not 4. And that would make things an awful lot easier if we were able to just get the aggro and then just dump all of the AoE that we could possibly find on it, not get torn apart. But yeah, again, it's not as bad as I feared, but it does need some work, certainly, before it is in a state that I personally would be happy with. My name's been Totalbiscuit, and that's been a little look at Zul Gurub. Most of the bosses, plus most of the trash in there. The first impressions video by trollface.jpg, and I'll be bringing you a full video and guide set over the next couple of days, as well as hopefully hitting up Zul Aman when that is available, which it currently is not. What I'd also like to point out is that PTR content will be my priority at the moment, which means that a secondary concern will be Azeroth Daily. Azeroth Daily, as I've said before, takes between 4 to 6 hours to put together. It's very time-consuming, and I think that it's probably more important that people see PTR content and brand new stuff as opposed to Azeroth Daily. I'm not looking to drop it entirely for this week. If I can get it out, I will get it out. Certainly, no question about that. I've only really had half the day today anyway, because I was just ending my holiday, and we had a, it was a big gathering around my place. We played a bunch of board games. I might add Battlestar Galactica, great board game, amazing board game, especially while drinking tequila. But I would not recommend that you do the Battlestar Galactica drinking game, which is whenever something bad happens, you take a drink, unless you want to wind up in the mortuary. That would not be good. It's a little unpleasant. But yeah, like I say, I only had half the day, really, and I want to get this PTR content out as a priority. So I'm sorry if that disappointed people. I understand the regularity of Azeroth Daily is important, but I would also say that PTR content is very important to people. And right now, honestly, PTR content in terms of stuff that isn't just being data mined is not being covered in great detail. So I feel that it's probably the job of this channel to make sure that happens. Before I go, you've probably not even been listening to me. You've been staring at this wonderful piece of artwork in the background. Indeed, there is more to it. You can't see the legs there for obvious reasons. It's a very large portrait-style piece of fan art. I wouldn't even call it fan art. I would call it actual art. I mean, it's as simple as that. It is unbelievably great. And you can head on over to the URL that's there. I've also popped it in the description below this video. Now, this guy's actually, with my permission, of course, selling some prints of this, so if you want one of these for your wall or just something for your desk or whatever, go for it. I personally just ordered a big-ass thing for my wall, and I'll post you a good picture when it arrives, but whatever the case, they are available. Go check it out. Obviously, go download it as a wallpaper. It is amazing, so thanks a lot to David for putting that together, because that is incredible. Really, really awesome. Right, I'm going to bed. I'll see you guys next time.